this winter season dies down and we round out into spring, I have found myself bringing out my crock pot more and more. And when I make these videos, they are a really big inspiration for me to try new meals for my husband and I. So today we are making in the crock pot a rump roast. It's my first time ever making one, and I'll probably make one again in the fall when the weather starts to really cool back down again. This was super simple. I just basically threw everything in the crock pot, starting with potatoes and carrots, onion. I threw some mushrooms in there. I had a lot of extra scraps and such for my vegetable stock that I always save my scraps for. You guys have seen me do that many a times now. And we got this rump roast from a local farm, and that is one of the things we are aspiring to do this year, to purchase more organic meats, more local meats. If we had more space, my husband and I have talked many a times about getting like a whole cow or a whole pig, a whole bunch of bulk meats, and then just keeping it frozen, but we just don't have the space for that currently. But that is a future dream and a future plan for us. But for right now, we are going to just stick with starting off with some local meats. This one was really, really good. And I just ended up seasoning it with some garlic, salt, and pepper. And I think I added some rosemary and thyme in there, as well as some of my fresh dried herbs, and let it sit in the crock pot. I put it on high for, I believe, 6 hours or 5 hours, because I started this a little bit later in the day. I wasn't planning on starting it as late, but I think it was on high for about 5 or 6 hours, and let it slow cook and do its thing. I also added in here some of my homemade chicken stock that I made a while ago. It's very gelatinous as it's been sitting in the fridge for quite a while, but it made the most delicious broth to put on top of the rump roast and also the potatoes that I stuck in the crock pot as well. I added a little bit of cornstarch too, just to thicken up the bottom liquid so I could have like a gravy to put on top of my meat and my potatoes, and this turned out so good. It was so tasty. This beef was absolutely delicious. We don't eat a ton of beef here. I've said that a handful of times. We stick to leaner proteins, but this one was for the books. It was so tasty. And although I do want to make some new items and these videos inspire me to do so, I also have real life going on, and when that happens, I stick to some classics, one of which being just a whole roasted chicken has been a favorite of ours. I think we've gone through maybe 4 or 5 of these in the past couple of months. We've really enjoyed a whole chicken. And I just cut up some lemons, stuff those on the inside, season it with really good olive oil, really good salt, some pepper, and a little bit of paprika on top, and let it go in the oven until it is golden and crispy and delicious. It is amazing. And I'm serving that up with some roasted butternut squash and roasted sweet potatoes. We hadn't had a butternut squash in a while, and I wanted to make one again, so I picked one up when we went to the grocery store last and roasted it alongside some sweet potatoes, and it made for a really easy, tasty, pretty quick dinner. Another classic for us, one that I hadn't made in a little while, is meatloaf. And I've been using turkey for meatloaf. I think we should have some ground beef on hand just for meatloaf. This was still really good, but it just didn't have the same effect and punch as meatloaf does, and it wouldn't be meatloaf without some mashed potatoes. So I'm making some mashed potatoes with some mini little red potatoes to go along with that as well, and then also some Brussels sprouts. And I don't really have a recipe for meatloaf. I kind of just do what I've seen my mom do. So I add an egg, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder. I put some chopped onion in there as well. I also had a couple of mushrooms left over, so I threw some mushrooms in there, and some regular chopped garlic I threw in there as well. And then I ended up putting in maybe 1/3 of a cup of some homemade sourdough breadcrumbs that I've had for a little while. They've been sitting on my counter, and I've been meaning to put them on top of the cabinet or in a pantry cabinet somewhere else that's not the counter, but they've just started living there. But I did add some of those to this as well, worked it together with my hands, and then put it in my loaf pan, and then just did a classic topping of ketchup and brown sugar. And I think I put a little bit of coconut aminos in that mixture as well, just for an added layer of flavor. You really can't go wrong with a simple comfort food like meatloaf. And for these Brussels sprouts, sometimes I will do this, sometimes I'll just roast them with salt, pepper, olive oil, garlic powder, onion powder, and like some paprika. But this time I did salt, pepper, olive oil, and then added some fresh lemon zest. This really brings out a delicious flavor when roasting these vegetables, and then added some lemon juice with that as well, and then topped it off with some Parmesan cheese, and the Parmesan got all brown and golden and delicious and crunchy and made for a really delicious side. As I said, I'm doing mashed potatoes. Everyone does mashed potatoes differently. I have made mashed potatoes before on this channel. So real vaguely, I add Greek yogurt because we prefer Greek yogurt to sour cream, Parmesan cheese. I was using up some half and half, so I added half and half instead of milk. I really try when I make dinners to use up a lot of what we have. If we have straggler little bits here and there, I try to figure out a way to use them so nothing goes to waste. I don't want to waste a lot. It made some pretty delicious mashed potatoes, but I do try to keep that pretty universal along all my dishes. If I see something like those mushrooms that needed to get used up, I just threw them in with the meatloaf. Any way I can figure out how to incorporate something that might be going bad into a dish, I try to do that. And for my second last meal, we are really rocking potatoes this week. I usually don't do potatoes like this 2 days in a row, but we had them and I decided to use them. And I'm just making some very simple roasted potatoes with olive oil, salt, and pepper. And that is it. Letting them get crispy and brown, sort of like a hash, in the oven, and cooking them until they are soft on the inside, but crispy on the outside. And then our main protein is some chicken breasts, but it is Jamie Oliver's spicy chicken. And my dad and I, right around COVID, I think during COVID, were on a really big kick for Jamie Oliver recipes. They were our favorite, and I was looking through my little recipe book here that I have with all of my family recipes and recipes from jobs past, and I was looking at the spicy chicken recipe and realized I have not made this chicken in a long time. I have it briefly up here on the screen for you. I did not add turmeric or cayenne because I didn't have them, but I added everything else: salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder. I did a little bit of chili powder and then just paprika as well, and then the tomato paste with lemon juice and lemon zest. Delicious. I ended up just pan frying it in my cast iron pan with some coconut oil, and it turned out delicious and juicy and wonderful. We have been using the Whole Foods air chilled, I believe it's called, organic chicken, and I never really paid much attention to the taste and texture of chicken because we had just gotten it from a regular grocery store since it was cheaper, but we are making a better effort to enjoy some of this fresher chicken because we have had this one from Whole Foods compared to a local grocery store chain, and this chicken is so much better. Just the taste, the texture, the quality, you can really tell it's a lot better. So we have been making it an effort to try to eat more organic products such as this chicken. And then alongside this with the potatoes and my chicken, I'm just whipping up some rice. I just made it a cilantro rice, so I seasoned it with a little bit of salt and then some dried cilantro to have as an additional side for this meal. And as the week comes to an end, our very last meal is something very easy. Something I have never made for us is BLTs. I have never made that for us ever. So I decided to make some BLTs, but I ended up making them sort of like a turkey club almost because I don't love sliced tomato. So I added some turkey on mine with some pesto, and this was so good. I used some homemade sourdough sandwich bread, toasted it because this is how I have always made BLTs, toasting the bread in the oven, adding on your condiments, and then all your fillings and bits on the inside. And this was so good. Sometimes it's just easier, and sometimes the day just calls for a simple dinner like this. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below. I make 2 new videos every single week on all things sourdough, homemaking, and country living. I appreciate every single one of you for watching, and I will see you in my next video.